Someone told me, don't make a video on this comment, it's just food for thought. You're either new here or you're trying to use reverse psychology. One of the things you posted was, did Anthony Fauci do a study a few years ago demonstrating that during the Spanish flu, the wearing of masks increased deaths? And then you say, yes, he did. Which means what you're saying is, you're accusing Anthony Fauci of saying that wearing masks increased the death rate during a viral pandemic, the Spanish flu. Now, in 2008, which is what is being referred to by conspiracy theorists, Anthony Fauci did a secondary bacterial pneumonia comorbidity study, among other things, in this paper you're talking about. What that means is, if you get a virus, you can also get an opportunistic bacterial infection. A lot of us have had that. I'm a victim of having 2 different viruses at the same time, and I think 1 or 2 bacterial infections. I had staph and strep infections of the lungs, sinuses, eye sockets, and inner ear. The fact that I'm not blind, deaf, or dead is probably a sad comment on my ability not to die, I guess. I mean, just rather not go through this. But in this 2008 study, it didn't say masks contributed to the Spanish flu at all, the death rate at all. Please read and see if masks are actually mentioned as a source of bacteria or anything else. What was discussed in it, at least according to people who reviewed it, because this was actually reviewed, this paper. People, reviews work all the time. And what people did when they fact check it, which people immediately scream fake news when it contradicts whatever you saw on Twitter, was that he was studying the effects of having a virus go through as a pandemic, weakening the medical system before we had full antibiotics. And antibiotics not being able to work against a virus, they work against bacterial infections, and we didn't really have them then. Not really, not good ones. We had penicillin, I think, was something we had, or did we? I'd have to go look up history. Maybe you should. And it had nothing to do with the masks making it worse. You'd have to look at the study. Scroll on down. academia.oup.com/JID/article/198/7/962/2192118 is the cited article. First look for masks or mask. Just look for mask. Other things you posted. Tuberculosis kills 1.5 million a year. The death rate's 10% across all ages and ranges, and it's still with us today. Worldwide TB-related case fatality rate, I could find a list for, because it's large enough that worldwide, if you collect it all together, you get a round number. And like I said when I was talking about COVID-19, unless you're dealing with a long enough period of time, a year is really not long enough, but it's a year for COVID-19, because technically it started in Wuhan in October, November, December. And it is worldwide, so we have a very broad number of people, unfortunately, because it killed a lot of people. That has a case fatality rate of 2%. Now, this is something that YouTube and Google do not want said because it oversimplifies things. TB can be gotten and be asymptomatic 90% of the time. It can even self-resolve, and the person can simply be asymptomatic or just not have it anymore. Is it a viral or bacterial infection? This is for you to read. But the case fatality rate listed is 15% worldwide, or 1.57 million in 2017 and 1.49 million, or 1.5 million, in 2018. That means currently it's not 1.5 million deaths. It's actually lower. It's lowering every year. Because from 2017 to 2018, where I got these numbers from, they were talking about the fact that it increased the amount of treatments for anti-TB treatments to people who were showing signs of it or were diagnosed for it because they were testing more people, something Trump doesn't want done. Slow down the testing for COVID-19. Almost 70% of the people were receiving treatment, which drastically reduced the death rate. But again, people 90% of the time don't die from it. They are asymptomatic. They don't show full-blown infections. The ones who do show full-blown infections sometimes show over a 30% self-resolution because the immune system eventually kills it. How does that happen? What is this wizardry? In the United States, however, specifically, 90% of infections remain asymptomatic due to treatment, even when they flare up and become symptomatic. So now we're talking 90% of the 10% is now down to about 1% of the cases are hard to treat. This is mostly because it's become resistant to antibiotics that, by the way, if you didn't know this, it's preventable and treatable. And there's a vaccine for it, by the way. A fairly interesting thing to compare it to. The chance of death from a case of TB in let's talk about 1995. It was 8%. By 2008, it dropped to 4% because it was ridiculously high in the 1960s, and the United States and many other countries did a full court press to get rid of it because it was killing people, because it would take years to actually kill you or even infect you enough to hurt you, and it was very, very transmissible and became a big bug. And it was an epidemic, not a pandemic. Well, it is a pandemic. In 2012, we had 3 per million persons in the United States dying that year in 2012 from TB. Out of 300 million Americans, that's like 1,000 people. You know that, right? What's the current death toll from COVID-19? I'm sure you're ignoring at this point that I'm going to say the words we're at 250,000 now, okay? We're at 250,000 dead in a year. 1,000 versus 250,000. This is the comparison you want to do. 2017, we had 515 deaths instead of what we had in 2012, which means it's dropped a death rate. Our case fatality rate, bare minimum, is probably half of that. So we've gone from, it's below 2%. The case fatality rate per person showing symptoms, the same way we gauge COVID-19, is obscenely bad. But it's 500 people dead per year instead of 250,000. But no, that's not good enough. We're doing an academic discussion. Okay. 2018, it's 2 per million for the U.S. population max, and has dropped below that, which means by definition we are now at the point where it's almost eradicated. It's still there. You just have to detect it in people, increase testing, something, again, Trump doesn't like, and treat it. Treat it as a public health issue. Get rid of it because it's a communicable disease. Saying COVID-19 deaths are lower or the same, or should be compared in 2020 as the chances from dying from TB, seems a bit odd. What is your motivation? Let's read the rest of your comment. I'm reading it out of order because I'm dismantling it, because it's arranged in such a way that it is convoluted. Did they ever shut down society over TB? No, they didn't, because that increases the host of medical issues across the scope of society. That last statement there I'm taking out of context and rewording to make it more of an assertion rather than some stupid just asking questions bullshit question. No. Locking down people against a pandemic is how you get rid of it. That's what was confirmed about each of them. And shutting down society increases other medical issues. I agree it does. But it doesn't kill people more often. It doesn't spread like a disease. Being triggered by wearing a mask, turning you into an idiot psycho who goes into a Karen meltdown at Denny's, isn't a communicable disease, at least by definition. We call it hysteria. But yes, actually certain portions of society in the United States and other countries have been shut down over TB because it was fucking running rampant and people weren't taking health laws correctly. They were ignoring them, mask holing it. So what happened is it became a legal requirement for certain tasks and jobs that you had to get a TB test. If you wanted to get free treatment for medical treatment or get insurance, you had to do a TB test. If you wanted to get married at one time, I think there was a TB test. There's a bunch of shit like this that says, yeah, there are some compelling rules here. The thing is, locking down society wasn't needed because it's 500 deaths per year instead of a quarter fucking million. Don't make a video on this comment. It's just food for thought. Listen to this. Really? Did they clamp down on anyone talking about it at all? No, that's not what happened. Well, in my case it did, but that's a bot by YouTube and Google. No, the they you're referring to, the government run by Trump, isn't clamping on people talking about it in general. We're telling people not to tell somebody, like Donald Trump, to shine an ultraviolet light down their throat or drink bleach because that's irresponsible and deadly medical advice because Donald Trump is a fucking nitwit. And so is a literal lady witch doctor acknowledged who said some other shit. And every other huckster. And every other shill. And every other fucking snake oil salesman on the internet. They get silenced. Why? Because they tell people to do shit that kills them. And you go around telling people Anthony Fauci did a study a few years ago demonstrating Spanish flu, the wearing masks increased the death rate. No, as a matter of fact, he didn't, because you didn't fact check any of that. That literally took me, by just removing some of your if, ands, and buts. I'm not kidding. The entire search result, if you type in your question without making it a question, if you just say Anthony Fauci, study, Spanish flu, masks, deaths. That's all you had to type in. Every page was the same thing. Fact check. No, we didn't do that. No, that's not true. Here's every single Anthony Fauci paper. We couldn't even find a reference like that. The one that they found that was closest was the one that was cited. People took shit out of context while they were selling snake oil. Because they're mad they have to wear a fucking mask, and they think wearing a mask and complying with laws is violence. This is actually a mask I wear. It's dirty as hell because I wore it primarily during a firestorm in the area I'm at that made the air deadly. And I had to sit down in it for 5 hours because I couldn't find a place to hide from it. The whole town shut down. I got locked out of my building that I'm in right now because I forgot that it auto locks when I closed the door. I fucked up. Some of you have done the same thing. Some of you weren't wearing clothes. You were wearing bunny slippers. But anyway, in my case, it caused lung damage because I have chronic upper respiratory damage. Even though I have good diction. And I did study opera at one time until that actually took me out, all the medical problems. I can still do some things with my voice. This is an extremely altered speech pattern so that I can speak and breathe without coughing up blood at one time. I wear this mask because I'm protecting other people because I'm not a fucking asshole! How's that for projection? And this mask was bestowed upon me because someone literally deadass felt sorry for me because they thought I was going to die because when I sneezed, black tar came out of my goddamn throat. I've been on a ventilator. Fuck you! To death! I'm sick of this shit. You got your triggering. That's what you wanted. I'd like to thank the Academy. But no, really, fuck you. In the neck, with a pogo stick. A dull one. You reposted lies. Your comments deleted. You can comment under this video by admitting you misquoted Anthony Fauci. You were wrong. And you misquoted a bunch of data about 500 deaths being the equivalent to you being triggered over an unnecessary lockdown after 250,000 died in the United States alone. But no, really, fuck you. All of you. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. All people like you. Just go away.